Thank you so much, Praveen, and thank you, ICN, for having us. It's great to be a part of this panel with esteemed people from the industry. The topic actually is quite broad. You have semicon on one side and bio-based chemicals on the other. But the one thing which we've heard when we speak to our clients is the common interest amongst all of these topics, right? If you look at it, the last couple of years have been a bit of a tough one for the industry. But one thing which has been consistently, that we've heard, that we've seen, is the narrative around China plus one playing out, right? So it's been around in a lot of industries, but chemicals is probably one of the few ones which will actually benefit from it for a variety of reasons, right? We've seen that in specialty, we see that in agrochemicals. Now the question which everyone wants to understand is what next? Right, and obviously, given the buzzword around semicon, the fab coming up in India, a lot of push around energy transition and EV coming into the fore, and sustainability, all mega trends. The industry is very keen to know what is next in line. So with that, maybe I'll start off with the first question to Mr. Ashwin Shroff. So what do you think, apart? One, obviously, these three topics, which is semiconductor, EV battery, and EV chemicals, bio-based chemicals because of sustainability. Do you think this is the next frontier for the chemical industry in India? Are there other topics which might be interesting? So if you could share your thoughts on that, that would be super helpful.
The moderator would be first of all, good morning to everybody. I must compliment the organizers for organizing a wonderful session. First of all, the title itself is very interesting, Next Gen. So my first question which came to my mind was, is the next gen safe? I mean, we, all of us, especially the youngsters, I think we are all under a great threat. So what we need is next generation technologies, next generation thinking, so that we are all there. We are able to survive. Then only the question of other things will be there. So a first broad topic I would just like to share is that I think the time to only look at economy and economic growth, GDP growth, is past. We need to balance the economy along with the ecology. And in many seminars, I've heard that people say that if you want to chase ecology, then it is higher cost. I don't think that is so. You can combine both. When you reduce consumption of anything, you will be benefiting at the bottom line. So I don't think there's a contradiction. It is a combination. It's a synergy that we need to recognize. So that's one point that I would like to say. The second typical topic that is discussed in any of the industry seminars is how can we increase the per capita consumption. I think those days are also gone. The world population, as we all know, is keeping on increasing. So even if the per capita consumption goes down, still there will be an overall growth. So we are all safe as industries, don't worry. Don't have to chase for more and more per capita consumption. So that's a kind of contradiction in thinking that I would like to propose. So these are just, and the last one in the general thought is that the time to chase consumerism, everybody should consume more and more, is gone. Now we need to be responsible consumers, whether as industry or as individuals. That's what is required. Otherwise, the future for all of us, especially next gen, is very unsafe. So we need to remind ourselves every day and be more responsible. Now coming to the topic of the day, though there looks to be a very great contradiction that where are semiconductors, where are bio-based products, I think the general trend is in a way in line with what I mentioned, that there are new opportunities emerging which help you to reduce the consumption, make things, do things more efficiently, whether it is bio-derived, whether it is IT, And IT is a big driver. Today, nobody can do without IT. And IT in various forms, whether electric vehicles, whether it is the semiconductors, whether anything. So I think these two are going to be growth drivers. And we as a company have been looking at this trend of the electronic chemicals. And you can't only talk about electronic chemicals. There is also the requirement of metals, including some precious metals, including some critical metals, including rare earths. So there is a lot of room for metal-based industry. But again, how you extract metals is going to be important. So, for example, we are looking at hydrometallurgy compared to the older technologies for the metal recoveries. And there are a lot of opportunities we are looking at. Similarly, renewable energy is required. Renewable energy is not a reliable 24/7 generation. So you need to store it. So storage batteries, which are also in a way part of the electronics, are also very important. There again, you cannot do without chemicals and metals. So there's a lot of opportunity in that one. And the last one is in the semiconductor area. There is room for a lot of very high purity chemicals, which again is a great opportunity. Same commodity chemicals which you were making till yesterday, but required in very, very high purity. So these are the kind of opportunities that are coming up. There are a few other thoughts I have, but maybe I can do it later. So thank you very much.
Thank you so for your thoughts. I think you've set the context well. It's about ecology and economy, and that's how the industry needs to look at it going forward. Dr. Sangeeta, if I could request you to also share your thoughts in terms of what are the other opportunities that you think the chemical industry can pursue in addition to some of the topics we've discussed.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Praveen, NextGen, to put up this event which is very apt for today's condition. And I represent Godavari Biorefinery, which is the company which has been into biorefining since more than 60 years and more than 6 decades. So our aim is only to produce bio-based chemicals. Now, when I talk about the topic, and I think about the topic which was being put together here, is like we're talking about, one is NextGen, and second is how do we do a kind of this transition. Because all of us know that during even COP28, the point discussed where each country is looking at how do they transition from fossil to maybe bio. I'm not saying only bio, because there are many ways of transitioning it to sustainable development goals. So our aim is basically to make sure that we have a better place available for the next generation. So we all have to think through it, how do we make sure that we do transition in a way where our development is not stopped, we are growing, as well as we are growing sustainably. Now, one part which comes to my mind as I belong to a chemical industry, which is also a very much like this, almost 30% energy consumption comes from the chemical industry. So we need to think through it, how do we make sure that we have better energy efficiency in our processes, how do we have our processes which are more economically and sustainable, because all our atom economy is very critical for the industrial growth. Now, industry cannot stop growing because we participate in each segment of the industry, whether batteries, to the fuel, to the chemical, to the pharmaceutical, and everywhere. So we have to be growing, but looking at all the aspects, if we take a smaller part, that whatever biomass available in the country, if we start looking at that as a feedstock, because this is a feedstock which is not being utilized completely, various reasons, like biochemical is being talked from many years. It was also produced by many companies in the past, but this is the right time, which I think is where we can see the consumer interest, and the people are talking about how do we make sure that we have renewable carbon portion into the product, because this may also help in some way for decarbonization of the whole industry and economy. So if I have to look at is like what are the waves, yes, I do believe this is the right time for getting into the biochemical or transition space. It's various ways, as we mentioned, the energy efficiency. So this is the right time and right space for innovations. So we need innovation right from the farms, because when I'm talking about renewable carbon, it's going to come from the farms. So we need to have better yields in the farms. We should have better like retaining the carbon, because I think if you read a lot of articles, it says that soil carbon is reducing. So we have to also start looking at that. How do we make sure the soil carbon is retained? So there is an innovation segment there, and then we have how do we have better process conversion? What is the conversion which we use for converting biomass into various chemicals? As we also discussed in the previous panel, is like if I can have that bio oil which can go to the cracker and then convert onto products. So we have a lot of space where we can innovate and make sure we get there. And definitely AI and digitization will also support this kind of growth.
Thank you for that. I think as a chemical industry, whenever you think about decarbonization, the challenge always is, in our case, the carbon is actually the product and not not a emission, right? So it becomes much harder. So what we do is, given the diversity of topic, the next set of questions we'll focus on is on EV chemicals. We'll come back to bio-based chemicals in a bit. So with that, the whole adoption of EV has seen a bit up and down. When the FAME policy has been around, adoption has gone up. When FAME policy got pulled back, EV adoption has seen a bit of shrinkage. But I think everyone in the room would agree that it's a matter of time that EV will become mainstream. In this context, I just wanted to get thoughts from Kalpesh. What is the ecosystem like for EV cell material in the country? How do you see that evolving? What kind of help and support you might need? Kalpesh, if you could share your thoughts on that.
Good morning, everyone. All right, so this is working. That's good. EV ecosystem, right? So the ecosystem consists, just for the general audience, because this industry is so new, the EV ecosystem consists of the end users, who are the OEMs. Then you have the cell makers, who actually make the cells and the battery makers. Then you have the cell makers. Then you have battery chemicals. Then you have the supply chain for that. And then at the end, you have the miners. Okay? So this is the whole ecosystem that we are talking about. And Epsilon, we basically cover the battery chemicals. So if you are talking about a cell, then you have the cathode, anode, you have a separator, you have an electrolyte, you have the casing. So Epsilon manufactures the cathode and anode side of it. Now, you talked about the ecosystem in India. It's a fledgling ecosystem, I would say. The good thing is that we have all the players across the ecosystem except for the mining part. But it's fledgling. You only have 2 or 3 players in every segment. Okay? So in that sense, we are just starting out. It also shows the vision that Mr. Handa, our MD, had when he set up the first anode manufacturing back 5 years ago. Okay? On the anode side, we have an ingrown in-house technology that was developed from R&D and now is at a pilot scale. Okay. On the cathode side, we just acquired a German company, Johnson Matthey. They are R&D, they pilot and the cell testing. But again, to go back to the ecosystem, there are several challenges that the downstream players have. First and foremost is, how do you get a guaranteed and a reliable supply chain? The supply chain of the EV ecosystem today is dominated by an incumbent solid player, which is China. Okay. Now, just to talk about numbers, on the anode side, China is about 70%. On the cathode side, specifically LFP, China is about 90% or even higher. So the world is looking for an alternative. It's not anti-China, but it's just diversification of the supply chain. Okay. So in that sense, Epsilon has already announced plans to expand capacities for anode to up to 100 KT And on the cathode side, we will be expanding the capacity to 10 KT by 2026 and 100 KT by 2030. But there are still several challenges. One is this industry, the entry barrier is very high because the capex is very high. The other problem is when you approach a cell manufacturer, the qualification timelines are 8 months to, it can go up to 24 months. So when you want to expand capacity, when you want to bring new capacity with a very high capex, you do want to make sure that there is an offtake. But the offtake occurs only after the qualification happens, which is 2 years. So it's a little bit of an issue for the industry. So it's a I would say, high barrier to entry. Then there's another thing, which is this industry, unlike traditional chemical industries, the technology landscape evolves very rapidly. So if you see where the EV industry was 10 years ago in terms of the chemistries for LFP or anode and where they are now, very different. So I would just like to summarize that there are two key takeaways I would like to point out is the industry is new. We have the entire ecosystem, but we have a few players. So there has to be partnerships within the players to basically take this ecosystem forward. Government should step in and make sure that not only the upstream players, but also the PLI, the advantages are passed on to the downstream players so that this ecosystem can actually evolve. The last thing is, it's a great opportunity for the Indian players because even conservative estimates point to about 14 to 16% CAGR growth up to 2030. And after that, it'll be even more. So I think I leave with a very optimistic note. Indian manufacturers, if we step up, if we partner, we can not only offer a diversified supply chain to our Indian customers, but also global customers.
Thank you, Kalpesh, for setting the context on the EV chemicals side. Darshit, if I was to, pull you in, one, any thoughts on what Kalpesh said, and second, given the challenges, anything from a policy side that you had in mind that you think can be done to help accelerate this transition?
Yeah, check. Yeah. So thanks. So as Kalpesh rightly said that while this is an opportunity, but there are certain challenges that we have to overcome. The most important part when it comes to any kind of cell raw materials is that lithium-ion cell is a very high-tech product. Any kind of raw material, for it to be adopted in a lithium-ion cell, takes around 2 to 3 years of qualification timeline. So even if you are setting up any new factory, the pace at which the revenue will be generated by that factory will be very slow, especially in the first 2-3 years, because you will be giving a lot of samples for trials and qualification. Hence, making the necessary profit to justify returns in the initial first 2-3 years is very, very difficult. If we really want to bring in, if overall nation wants to bring in a systematic way of setting up supply chain in the country, policy support is extremely important. Especially in terms of, say, capex subsidy, investment tax breaks. Things like these will spur the investment and spur the risk appetite of the, of the investment community, and will, help in setting up the early stage ecosystem, which is very important. Second, very, very critical thing is we have a lot of countries in Japan, Korea, we have a lot of companies in Japan, Korea and China who have already established this very, very well. It is a good opportunity for various players in India to do a technology collaboration with a lot of these companies and establish their supply chain in India and their manufacturing basis in India. What government and the policy can help in this case is an accelerated G2G dialogue and more events and initiatives like these that can spur the interest of these respective countries to do such alliances and JVs in India. The third thing which is very important is accelerated statutory approvals. A lot of these chemical industries require environmental clearances and various other statutory clearances that are needed. And many a times there are delays at various levels, to get the ball rolling. And while setting up a capex, any kind of delays will just, keep rising the IDCs and the overall capex value, which makes the investment unviable over a period of time. So accelerated statutory approvals for such specialized industries, which are strategic in nature, because one element that I want to add here is EVs is just not only about the decarbonization and stuff like that, but it is also about the energy security of the country. The more EVs run, the lesser is the oil dependence for that incremental vehicle, which makes the energy independence, which increases the energy independence of the country. So this sector is a strategic sector for India's growth, and hence it has to be treated that well, and all the raw materials suppliers should be, given that kind of a, benefit. So yeah.
Perfect. Thanks, Darshit, for that. Mr. Shroff, your thoughts on the EV cell manufacturing ecosystem. You spoke about the recycling ecosystem as well. So if you could share your thoughts in terms of what needs to be done to accelerate this.
In a way, I shared a few thoughts earlier, but going a little deeper into that, I would say there are 2-3 kinds of things that will be required. One is the requirement of the metals, on which again India is dependent quite a lot. Lithium is one example. There are other examples. Cobalt is another example. So we need to, and I would like to believe that in India we have resources. States like Orissa have got a lot of minerals which have not been exploited fully. Kerala is another one, and I'm sure, India is a large country, we have got many resources which need to be explored and exploited. The technologies for recovery of metals also need to be relooked at. Just to take one example, the aluminium is recovered using a process called the Bayer process, which was invented long back. If you look at the energy consumption, the pollution, etc., I think it needs to be relooked at. It's just one example. There are many other metals. Similarly, rare earths we have, otherwise China is monopolizing that. So we have that. So this is in the area of the metals and the critical areas. The other one is the specialty chemicals. There are 2 wonderful organizations, and what I would like to support what you said, that what you need is a network of people who are all connected with each other. So I'm very happy to say that there are 2 organizations. One is IESA Pune, which is focused on the storage batteries, which is able to put all the network of all the people who are involved in the storage batteries. Similarly, there is the organization, again with the same abbreviation, IESA in Bangalore, which are focused on semiconductors. So they are also trying to create a network of people who need this. So with that, and many meetings are taking place. Also, many states are quite active in this. So Gujarat, for example, is a leading state, but many other states are also very active in that. So there's a lot of government support, a lot of states very active. Demand, of course, is there. So just to take one example, that it is many times when you talk of semiconductor chemicals, you say, okay, but our plants will come up after 2-3 years and all that, so the demand will take time. I would say the whole world is waiting, world is hungry for many of these products. So why not look at the export opportunities? And not only in India we talk China plus one, I think the whole world is talking China plus one. So there are many opportunities. So I think the opportunities are galore, and we need to look at it. We need to work in a collaborative manner. I'm very happy to see all of us sitting on this dais. We can all collaborate and work together and take the country forward. And of course, we will also be benefiting. So,
perfect. Thank you for that, Mr. Shroff. Changing tracks, I think we spent some time on EV batteries and chemicals going there, and talking next is about sustainability from the bio-based chemicals lens. sustainability is becoming a theme which is coming up increasingly in conversations, both from the chemicals company side, but also from the end consumer side. So in this context, just wanted to get a sense of what do you see as drivers, Nitin, of the demand for bio-based chemicals? One is obviously the macro or the tailwinds behind it. Does that also manifest in terms of any kind of premiums and any kind of willingness to partner with you from your customers? Would love to get some thoughts from you on that.
First and foremost, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Praveen, for organizing this NextGen Summit. And thanks, Avinash, for the question. So I'll start with the market size first for bio-based chemicals. So it's estimated to be around $100 billion in 2024, which would be growing at a CAGR of 9.6% to around $210 billion by 2032. Now, the transition to a bio-based economy has multiple drivers. The foremost being the environmental issue of climate change. As per IPCC, which is Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Control, we have until 2030, before which the climate change is reversible. Yeah. So if we continue to rely on the existing commitments, the climate commitments as per the Paris Agreement, the global temperature will be rising by 3.2 degrees centigrade by end of the century. Now, as was Mr. Shroff was mentioning, one of the key drivers is the growing population, the growing purchasing power, and the increasing demand on resources. Just to give you some ballpark numbers, it's estimated that the global population will reach 9.6 billion people by 2050. And it's calculated by experts that we will require 3 planet Earth to sustain our current standard of living. So for me, the chemical industry, through the bio-based chemicals and specialty chemicals, is core to the solution of the global challenge of climate change as well as resource scarcity. So the demand for the specialty chemicals and bio-based chemicals will strongly continue to grow through 2030. Yeah. Now, nowadays, there is a greater expectation from individuals, from stakeholders, from governments, to the organizations, to companies on reduction of their carbon footprint and reduction in emissions. So most of the large organizations are talking of scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 targets, reductions. There is science-based target initiative, SBTI. Even my own organization, we are talking of that we will be reducing our scope 1, scope 2 by 40% and scope 3 emissions by 14%. So until unless the whole value chain is not equipped, this will not be achieved. Coming to the investor side of it, so the investors are changing their strategies and aligning it more towards the Paris Summit. So just to name a few, BlackRock, which is the largest asset management company, recently announced that sustainability is now a key criteria for any of their future investments. Yeah. But the major role has to be, and the biggest driver for me would be the government policy and the regulatory framework. Yeah. So if you look at the demand of safer chemicals, which are regulatory compliant, is increasing. And the biggest increase is coming in Europe. When I mentioned to you that the current market size is around $100 billion, 61% of this is all in Europe. So there has been a lot of impetus coming in from the government itself to the industry on bringing up these more safer chemicals, more greener products into the foray. Yeah. Another reason, let's come to India per se. There are certain countries apart from India who are overly dependent on imports of fossil fuels. Yeah. So if you look at the flagship program of the Indian government, the ethanol blending program, has really fueled the whole bioethanol infrastructure in the country. Yeah. We are today at 11.2% of ethanol blending. And the targets are that by 2025, we will be at 20%. So this has been possible because of the Indian government and taking this as a more of a strategic industry itself. Yeah. Lastly, I'll talk of consumers, because you were asking about consumers. So we are seeing a lot of change in consumer behavior, more so towards their purchasing behavior and more ethical and moral considerations coming into the purchasing side of it. But we are seeing this more in the West. The market has to mature in the Asian parts and other parts of the globe so that this trend catches up. Now, who's paying premium for this, right? You were asking that is the... So right now, I can bluntly say that because of the government interventions and the maturity of the market in West, we are seeing a lot of traction in the West, and we are seeing a lot of multinationals who have already incorporated sustainability as part of their core strategy. Yeah. So there, yes, there is premium. They are ready to pay the cost of sustainability actually. In India, in Asia for that matter, I think we are still a bit far behind. We will, till the time the market matures, will require support via the government on policies, on PLIs, on subsidiaries being given to this so that at least the bio-based products also become economical, also achieve the economies of scale like the petroleum-based products. So someone has to pay for the cost of sustainability. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Nitin, for setting the context. Dr. Sangeeta, would you want to add a few more thoughts on that?
Thank you. I think Nitin has covered almost all the segments in quite a broader way because we come from almost similar industry perspective. I just wanted to add as the three pillar, which I think is definitely as climate change, which is a driving force for any transition, and then customer preference as well as legislation, because as he mentioned, is India's ethanol blending program is a good example. If we look at the growth, how it grew, it is like unless the government came in between and it made it mandatory, nothing happened, right? So we see the drastic change which happened. So can we just replicate this to biochemicals? It's a very simple thing. It's not like we don't have to change anything else. We just change it, just adopt to what we did for biofuel. Definitely for biofuel, the impact was that we wanted to reduce the fossil fuel import, but if you look at, India is net importer of ethanol and the feedstock. So we cannot say that one side I've reduced the fossil fuel, but still I'm importing ethanol for biochemical. So we have to look at holistically, like how do we look at the whole economy where I have fuel plus chemical as well, because when we want to talk about decarbonization, some of our friends who are in petrochemical industry today, they say, how will you kind of reach to the stage where you can produce so much quantity? Because the scale will be a challenge for all of us, but definitely if we all come together, it can be done because biomass is available and we are talking about both fuel and chemicals. If we integrate these refineries into the biorefineries, we should be able to reach the goal. When I talk about the customer preferences, they always talk about what is your carbon footprint, right? Let me come back to this carbon footprint. When we are using biomass, I have also used my consumed CO2 from the atmosphere. So I've captured CO2, which is being converted into the product, right? Now, when you talk about petrochemical, nobody asks how this petrochemical was taken out, right? We don't talk about it. But when we talk about biomass, my customer asks, how did you get this biomass? How sustainable was biomass? I think we need to look at equally. We need to kind of look at how biomass is made sustainably and how petrochemical is made sustainably. So sustainability becomes a common thread for all of us. And when we talk about LCA and PCF, because that is major part of our chemicals when it goes into the end product. So my PCF or my LCA depends upon what is the boundary we're looking at, right? when I'm talking about scope 1, 2, and 3, then it has to be kind of in an equal level. Like India is different than Europe. India is different than China, India is different than US. So how do we kind of have a same standard for all the countries? We are growing, we have different standards of producing the products and even the biomass. So I think we all need to look at how do we make sure that we are able to compete the world in a same scale, same platform, where we are given advantage of our growth. So these are the things which we need to really look forward as we grow in these industry, in biochemical, because the transition has to happen. We cannot ignore it because we do not have second planet to jump on, right? So we have to be here, so we need to change this.
Perfect. Just going off script a bit, there is this debate when bioethanol was being introduced of food versus fuel. Now, if you add chemicals to the mix, is that debate, is that a myth? Is that a reality? Are we competing for the same kind of biomass? Either of y'all, one of y'all.
Yeah. Okay. So when we look at India as a producer or use of biofuel and biochemicals, we say that biomass is used for making fuel and chemicals both, and we are not using the food which is consumed by human, right? As of now, we use surplus fuel and feedstock which is wasted on the ground. So we must look at our economy as country because we have a lot of carbon which is getting wasted on the sites. Let's convert that into product, and let's not debate on food versus fuel. It's food and fuel. So we have to, all our farmers are providing us fuel and food. So let's look at that way.
Just to add on what Sangeeta said, there's a misconception in the industry when we talk of food versus fuel, and especially for bioethanol. So there are different sources. I think Sangeeta mentioned in her presentation as well, we are a net ethanol importer. So when we are talking of ethanol imports, they are coming in from US, from Brazil, coming in via the corn route from the US, Brazil from the sugarcane. In India itself, we have molasses. So molasses is a major source of, bioethanol. Then the FCI grains also, that they are not the grains that go into the normal PDS or going for human consumption. They are rotten, broken grains which are not fit for human consumption, which are going into the bioethanol production. So the competition is not there. And for me, the bioethanol which is being produced from grains is actually a whole circular economy, because you are taking the grains and the end product actually, that which is not fit for its waste. I can share the numbers of what are the grain wastage in India and all, but I'm not stressing on that. So the thing is, once the whole process is done, the fermentation, the preparation, the ethanol, the end product actually, which is there, which is called DGSS, goes for feed. So there is no waste actually being coming out. It's a perfect example of a good circular economy.
If I may add to this, let's say when we talk of agriculture or crops, not that 100% of what you grow as a crop is used for human consumption or something. There's a lot of agricultural waste, crop residues which are available, which can be an excellent source of chemicals. One of the things, let's say in the chemical industry, one of the oldest technologies which has been the mainstream has been to produce syngas out of the crude oil, etc. Now what is syngas? Mixture of carbon monoxide and hydrogen. Is crude oil the only source? There are technologies available right in India to convert the agricultural waste into syngas, which can become a wonderful raw material for your chemical industry. So this is like this, let's not look at and unnecessarily look down upon some of these technologies. And just another thought which is different from this one is I think we also need to look at in the chemical industry the business models that we have evolved over the years. I would like to cite the example of caustic chlorine as an industry, which is one of the very large industries. If we look at caustic chlorine industry, it starts with salt. They produce caustic and chlorine. In India, at least, the focus has been on caustic. Chlorine is a kind of nuisance which comes along with the caustic. what do you do with that? So somehow just pump it, liquefy it, give it to whoever is willing to take it, whether they pay or whether you pay them to take it away. That's number one problem, chlorine. Number two, people like companies like mine who use chlorine for organic chlorinations. We generate HCl, which is a byproduct. There's no market for that. So chlorine is a nuisance for them, HCl is a nuisance for me. But all this is because there are centralized large capacity plants for caustic chlorine. People like us who consume chlorine much smaller than what they produce. So if there is, then I believe the technologies are available already globally for converting HCl back into chlorine and also along with hydrogen. So I think these are it's a new business model that we need to look at for the caustic chlorine industry. And I'm sure there are in many other industries, new business models are also required. So, thank you.
Perfect. I think with the food versus fuel being put to rest, Hemant, if you could come in addition to what we've discussed, what other trends do you see from a sustainability standpoint in the industry? Are there other parts of the chemical industry which are benefiting from this, say, because of the need for water, because of some of the other parts of the ecosystem that you see developing? Would love to get your thoughts on that.
No, thank you. First of all, thank you for giving this opportunity and congratulations for a fourth consecutive year making this a successful event. Thank you. I'll not talk on the chemical side more because, all legends of chemicals are sitting here. And, Shroff sir or Dr. Sangeeta also mentioned about several things on this development. Sustainability is definitely linked with life. What I put it as a sentence. I'll just take it in a different way. This morning, I was so happy to see the rain. Yeah, that nature is very happy. Sorry. Hello. Yeah, sorry. So I was just driving at that time. I saw the rain. I thought the nature is really happy with us. Yeah, but when I was reading the news, I'll not miss a word here. A substantial portion of the patient with lung cancer in India never smoked, said a study published in Lancet. Air pollution, occupational exposure to asbestos in construction-based industry, exposure to chromium, cadmium, arsenic, coal products at workplace are some causes. After reading this, and we are at transforming India stage, okay? At this stage, if we are talking about such kind of things, when we grow further, we say there is an opportunity. Opportunity definitely will come with the challenges. Yeah, the opportunity is for growth, but the challenges are like sustainability. How do we maintain it? When I read about sustainability challenges, we see the competition, the poverty are some of the words used. Yeah, some of the statement also said the buying power is increased. But still, when we hear something from market, it says sometimes, it's a marketing gimmicks. But I would say, like some of the presentation, we see always safety as the basics. I would say sustainability should become the basics for everything. Because if we are growing, the challenges are going to be there. The sustainability is going to play the role. And it's a most important thing what we see. Yeah, and we really need to think about growing instead of destroying anything further. Yeah. So this is what on the other side of it I would like. Thanks.
Sure. Thanks, Hemant. Kalpesh, your thoughts in terms of sustainability? Obviously, EV batteries are front and center of it, but any thoughts beyond?
Yeah, like the other esteemed panelists said, sustainability is non-negotiable at this point in any industry moving forward. Specifically on the EV side, see, the way to make this sustainable is to introduce circularity. One way to do is, the batteries have a certain shelf life. For two-wheelers and three-wheelers, it'll be 3 or 4 years. For the, four-wheelers and SUVs, it'll be probably 8 to 10 years. There is existing technology in the market that can break down the battery parts, segregate them into individual components, and then recycle those. Especially if you think about the minerals, even though the EV technology itself EV ecosystem itself is considered green, but there are still questions about the mining aspect of it. That's why, for example, if you think about NMC batteries, where you have the mining of cobalt, versus LFP, where you don't have cobalt, LFP is considered an eco-friendly or a sustainable solution, right? So when you recycle, especially on the metal side, lithium, cobalt, nickel, manganese, it is more sustainable and it is more environmental friendly. Now, as as one of my panelists mentioned, is the industry ready to pay a premium for that? That is the real question. Because the recycling processes or the technologies that are available today are extremely energy sensitive, energy intensive. So, for example, the hydrometallurgy, and there's a pyrometallurgy. So the hydrometallurgy can recover individual components all the way up to the metals. There's refining capacities that are available in China. Chinese guys do this all the time. There's none in India. There are some announced. But the energy equivalent, I mean, at the end of the day, if you put a hydrometallurgical unit, with the capex, it's very capex intensive. And at the end of the day, when you recover the metals, the customers will have to pay a premium as opposed to just going and buying the metals of China or the mining companies. So are the customers ready to do that? Is the government ready to step in and say, okay, this is more sustainable, let me subsidize the capex that you're putting in so that this industry can actually take off and thrive? So that is one thing. The other aspect, which is like a soft aspect, is the industry needs to invest heavily in R&D. Okay, that is one area that we lack in. Of course, in the EV space, we are latecomers. China has already invested about 20 years into this space, R&D, governmental fundings, the whole ecosystem. So it'll take us some time, but all players, we need to start investing in R&D and rapid prototyping. Again, with a rapidly evolving technological landscape, that is the only way that we can carve our own path. Otherwise, what happens is, every 4 years, we are looking to our partners elsewhere in the world for a technological JV. A lot of times what happens is the technology is developed for also certain regions, because those regions have certain supply chain or certain governmental subsidy policy advantages. When you just are trying to bring that technology here, it may or may not work. In fact, a lot of times it ends up being, you end up being cost negative on those. So these are the other things that we have to keep in mind.
Fair. Perfect. So the last topic actually from our side on the panel was around semiconductors and the chemicals that go in over there. Darshit, would love to get your thoughts in terms of how is that part of the ecosystem maturing. I do realize we are almost at the end of time, so a brief response would be great.
Yeah. So thanks for that question. So semiconductor is a very, very, very interesting industry wherein in the world, very few concentrated players have done so much that knowledge, that know-how of scaling it up, of doing, the precision in that upkeep, that is very, very limited to few people. And to reinvent the wheel is extremely, extremely difficult. The only way out, in case of semiconductor, I can think of two ways. Again, a very, very concentrated effort at the topmost levels to create the joint technology collaborations between the companies in India who are ready to invest and the companies in Taiwan and Far East Asia like Korea, Japan, etc., who really have the know-how. That is the only way in which this can be done. And the other very, very critical part from the softer aspects is that, these industries are extremely precision manufacturing driven. The standards of upkeep, clean room, discipline, etc. are very high. So even at a manufacturing culture level, we need to create a very robust system at individual company level, which truly encourages the habit of adhering to the strictest levels of SOP and completely discourages any attempt that people may have to take shortcuts. This is something that has been plaguing Indian industry for a long time. A lot of times at manufacturing, to create short-term benefits, we tend to take shortcuts, and all these shortcuts over a period of time create completely divergence towards SOP. That cannot happen in semiconductors. So yeah, so one thing at a cultural level, at the individual company level, these are the things to be done. And second is, let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's put all the energies, even at the highest levels of the government, to ensure these technology collaborations between companies. Yeah.
Thanks, Darshit. Hemant, any thoughts from your side from a semiconductor standpoint? Understand there are parts of the ecosystem.
Hello. Sorry. So, I'll give a perspective on the other side after manufacturing also. In semiconductor world, the climatic conditions are equally important. So just imagine about the storage, transportation, packaging. This is very critical. So yes, we at our end, we have certain developments we have done with some tie-ups, technology tie-up, what Darshit said. For an example, cobalt dichloride is one of the indicating system for the humidity level, right? Which was a challenge. Our company have developed that cobalt dichloride free products, and we have shown that this is working, and as per JEDEC standard, which is required for the semicon industry, they have been performing well. So such kind of things with our sustainability and with the demand or the requirement, yes, this is a growing market for India. We definitely, it is, other countries like Taiwan have done a fantastic job there. So yes, we need to adapt many things here in India, and yes, it will be a good challenge, but at the same time, yes, there are knowledge available, the skills available, which we need to utilize in the right way to grow in the right direction in that way. Right. Thanks.
Perfect. Thanks, Darshit. Thank you all panelists. I think we've done a very decent job of sticking to time. So appreciate your responses and appreciate all the insights. Thank you so much.